Hello and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, going into players I think could be week one ads. So I guess this is kind of like beat the waiver wire, or it's like, guys that we're still excited about, but that aren't really getting drafted yet. So I wanted to highlight some of these players early. Maybe you can consider these deep sleepers too. If you enjoy the video, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new here and want to hear more from us, hit that subscribe button. And if you have anything that you want us to go over in this offseason leading up to draft season, leave us a comment. So I'm going to have a couple players from each position here. We're going to have quarterbacks first, then running backs, receivers, and tight ends. So the first player I want to talk about is Shough. So obviously we're talking about from a superflex perspective here, right? Because he's not going to get drafted even in most superflex leagues, but I do think that there's a chance here that if he wins the job, that he could be better than we expect, right? Because I really do like the weapons he has around him, despite the poor offensive line. But since they probably aren't going to be able to run the ball very effectively, he might just get all of the offense channeled into him. They got Kamara out of the backfield, who's a great pass catcher. And then, Olave and Shaheed, who we both really like. So I do think that there's a chance that he comes out slinging it a little more than we expect. If he captures the offense a little better as well, I think that there's a chance here that we could see some decent level of passing out of him, as long as he can avoid the turnovers, right? So if he gets, 1 to 2 touchdowns a week type of production, so it's not going to be crazy, like 20 to 25 touchdowns and limits the turnovers down to, 5-6 turnovers. I think that there could be some value here that we're not accounting for despite the poor offense. And maybe we don't think he's necessarily the best talent. The next guy I want to talk about is Joe Flacco. So obviously this is contingent on him winning the starting job. But if he does, again, another guy where maybe he doesn't get drafted because there's so many players in that quarterback room, and maybe we think Gabriel or Sanders are eventually going to take over this season. But if he's playing well, I could see him possibly keeping them off the field for a while early in the year. And that could be really good as a third quarterback and somebody you could play as your second. So we've seen him with the Browns only 2 years ago, and he was excellent down the stretch. So this is somebody that, if you want to get off to a hot start and you want to have somebody to play, maybe you waited a long time on your second quarterback and you're like iffy or weary about how good they're going to be. This is somebody that you can draft and possibly help get you off to a hot start. And I think looking after week one, if he has a big game, he's absolutely going to be on waiver wires, and he's going to be getting plugged in as possibly a top 20 quarterback production wise, assuming he has that good first game and the offense looks like it's going to hit the ground running. The next guy up is Nick Chubb. So he hasn't really risen in rankings or in drafts that I've seen since Mixon's injury. So he is expected to lead the backfield and is obviously coming off of that horrible knee injury 2 seasons ago. But we did see him last year. It wasn't great, right? He didn't put up very efficient numbers or anything like that. But I don't think anybody expected him to, right? Just the fact that he got back on the field and he ended the year with an injury. But I do think that, they'll manage the injuries well in training camp, and he should be ready to go for week one. So with the uncertainty around Mixon, I think Chubb, if he doesn't end up getting drafted in leagues, right, he's still being ranked outside the top 175. I think that there's going to be a rush to the waiver wire to get him if he has any level of production in week one. Next guy up is Jerome Ford. So I did just hype Dylan Sampson in my last video where I talked about late round flyers. Ford is not somebody I'm super confident in. It's just somebody I wanted to highlight here because if he is going to be the starter, if Judkins doesn't get back on the field, that's something that I could understand him being an early waiver wire addition until something changes in their backfield. Now, I think he's more of a passing down player. He's a better pass catcher than rusher. And Sampson, I think, is a better rusher than pass catcher. So I still think that Sampson's going to be out there quite a bit, even if it is Ford. But I could see a situation where Joe Flacco leans into Ford in week one, gives him 5 targets, catches all of them for 50 yards at a touchdown, and everybody's like, oh, we got to go get Ford. But he's not somebody I'm super confident in. I just wanted to highlight the possibility of him being out there with Judkins out, even though Dylan Sampson is the running back I prefer in this backfield. Next running back up is Roschon Johnson. So we talked a lot about with Swift how they didn't really change the backfield, right? Just a 7th round running back, Kyle Monangai. But Roschon is actually been pretty productive in terms of scoring touchdowns over the last year, I should say, not over the last couple of years, but last year he was, right? He was used in short yardage. He was used on the goal line. And so you see the low yards per carry, but that's kind of comes with the territory with the types of touches he was getting. So there's a situation here where maybe they like him more. He had more passing game work as a rookie than he did in his second season. And Swift is a pretty good pass catcher, so I'd be surprised if he gets any role there. But if he expands his role on offense into similar to a David Montgomery style in Ben Johnson's offense, that's going to be a huge value and something that I could see him getting 12 touches in week 1. And everybody's like, whoa, this offense looks a lot better than we thought it was going to. And Roschon has a role in a way that we didn't expect him to. So that's kind of the theme also here, right? Is that the roles could expand. These are guys that aren't really looked at as starters or as fantasy assets that could be in situations where their roles expand significantly by week 1. So, and he fits that mold as well. Next guy up is Miles Sanders. So he's with Dallas, right? And we're all assuming Javonte is going to be the guy, and then Jaden Blue is probably going to be the wild card there with all his speed, and he's a 5th round rookie. But I feel like me included have looked over Miles Sanders and the possibility that maybe he's way more involved than we expect. He's always been a solid pass catcher throughout his career, even though Javonte, I feel like, is probably going to fill that role. There's a chance here that they split the role and Sanders and Javonte kind of get, drive 1, drive 2 type of thing. So if that happens, I do think Sanders is being very undervalued and could just be early in the year be looked at as somebody who's possibly going to lead the backfield over Javonte. So I think I have to reevaluate how I feel about Javonte now too, after looking into Miles Sanders a little bit in terms of making this video, because I do think that I was starting to put Javonte higher and higher and higher because I thought, there's a chance here that he's just a 3-down workhorse on Dallas. And after looking at Sanders, I feel like that's maybe overblown a little bit, and that Sanders is definitely going to mix in, even if it isn't Jaden Blue early on. And the last running back I'm going to highlight is Elijah Mitchell. So for some out there, this might be the first time that you're hearing that he's on the Chiefs, but he actually has been getting first team reps with the Chiefs in training camp already this offseason. So a lot can go into that. There can be a lot of reasons for that. He just signed, so they want to get him some work, but he's free, right? And if he gets any sort of work early in the year, he's coming off a major injury, missed all of last year, but we've seen him be very productive on the ground, right? We've seen him, he's got a season where he had 6.2 a carry, and obviously that was with the 49ers, but if he's efficient at all or showing any level of explosion above what Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have left, Elijah Mitchell is the wild card in this backfield that could end up being an early season pickup. And honestly, as we get closer and closer to the year, he could get some hype to be actually a late round flyer. So keep your eye on Elijah Mitchell. All right, now we're going to go down to pass catchers. So we got 4 wide receivers and a tight end. The first of which is Adam Thielen. So he was great down the stretch last year. Obviously kind of got caught up in that Deontay Johnson drama. He was hurt early in the year, then came back, and the quarterbacks were switching. So obviously the Panthers offense was kind of in turmoil last year. But in the last 8 games, he was very productive, with Bryce Young playing better. And I do think that there's, an opportunity here that he could be the number 2, right? I don't think he's going to usurp McMillan in the offense, but I think there is an opportunity, even as the 2, for him to be decently productive. And you can see even the last 4 games last year, right? It was 7, 6, 6, 6 targets. And he was still very productive with that. He was able to score 3 touchdowns. He's always been a good touchdown scorer throughout his career. And so Thielen, if he doesn't get drafted, is somebody that could end up on people's teams early in the year to try and bolster their wide receiver core. My next guy up is Joshua Palmer. So I did just hype Keon Coleman in my last video too. I did mention Palmer there, but I wanted to highlight him again and just say that he's been getting very good camp reports, right? That he has looked like the number 1. And whether or not that comes to fruition, I think, is another thing. But the fact that it's good early in camp and that he seems to be clicking with Josh Allen is only a good thing, right? And so, again, another guy that could possibly kind of vault into that late round conversation, but that if he comes out and gets the most targets in week 1 of any pass catcher on the Bills, everybody's going to be flocking to the waiver wire to get him. So keep an eye on him and maybe consider putting him in your late round plan. Next guy up is Darius Slayton. So I personally thought they were going to trade him at the deadline last year, and instead they kind of decided to keep him, extend him, and so he's there now. And Russell Wilson is going to be the starter to start the year, and Russ loves to throw the ball down the field, and that's where Slayton is the best. So not something where I think he's going to be like overly productive or anything. And I do still think Neighbors is going to be an absolute target hog, but you see the reception to target ratio even last year, right? 39 receptions on 71 targets. I mean, that is so poor. And that can only improve with Russ, because Russ, for all his faults, is very good at throwing the ball down the field and is very good at throwing the ball to the boundary. And so Slayton can still work over the field a little bit, but I think down the field is where he's really going to benefit here. And I could see him exceeding 750 yards this year and could be useful on certain weeks, especially if anything happens to Neighbors. And the last wide receiver I want to highlight here is DeMario Douglas. So they didn't really bring in any slot competition to take his role. So I do think that he's going to be locked into a lot of the short area targets for the offense. Diggs is also very good at the line of scrimmage, but they've already said he's going to play outside. I'm sure he'll slide into the slot a little bit, and Douglas will go outside a little bit. But I do think the role is stable. May is going into his first full season where, he's the one the whole off season. And some of the training camp clips have already been looking great. He's been targeted down the field a little bit. He's been targeted close to the line of scrimmage. He's looking explosive. So still really young, only 24 years old, and I think is going to get a big opportunity here in the passing game for the Patriots. So definitely somebody that I would expect is going to move up as we get closer to the year. But I don't know that he's going to get into the late round conversation. I think he's possibly going to be on a lot of waiver wires, maybe in that 30-40% owned in redraft leagues, and could be a big boom if he is getting heavily targeted early in the year. And the final guy I want to bring up is a tight end, Jatavian Sanders. So similar to Thielen, right, on that poor offense from last year, but still did pretty good with the targets that he did earn. And he was splitting with Tommy Tremble a lot. So he didn't actually have a very high target share very often. But when he did, he was very productive. So I think that there's a chance here that he kind of takes over as the number one, right? And you see sometimes he'd get 75% of the snaps and he'd get a bunch of targets. But then, when he wasn't being played as much, he got hurt in this area and then just wasn't really on the field a ton, wasn't part of the offense here, and then at the end of the year was okay. So this might be more of a dart throw that his role can expand and that the offense is going to be much better. And when he's playing 75% of the targets, I do think that he can push for a top 10 finish at the tight end position. So that's going to be something to watch out for, right? If he's playing a lot, you're going to want to try take a look at him, maybe add him early in the year. If he's not playing a lot, he'll just kind of stay on waiver wires. All right. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see us talk about anybody else, put it in the comments, and we look forward to talking to you in the next one. See ya.